Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the podcast. Joining me on the Marco Martins Revolution today, David de Villiers. He's a hair loss expert. He'll cringe at hearing me say that because he'll deny it, but he certainly is. And he is the co-founder of one of the leaders in keeping hair on men's heads in South Africa, and BAM. Fantastic company, really fun from a marketing standpoint, really great fun company, but really committed to the cause. David, welcome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
A revolution is a fundamental and relatively sudden change in political power. An organization which occurs when the population revolts. This is the Marco Martins Revolution, powered by Vodcast TV. Visit vodcasttv.com for more.
David, let's hop right in with it. You're the co-founder of BAM, and obviously I like to speak a lot on entrepreneurship on the show, etc. The market for hair loss historically has been exceptionally good. Men are prepared to spend a lot of money to keep hair on their heads.
Yeah, that's right. I think that it's something that you're seeing more and more these days. There are stats out there that sort of 67% of guys are losing their hair in their 30s to their 40s. Unsure exactly why that is. It's a factor of things from, we'll get into genetics around hair loss, stresses, and what we're eating and putting into our bodies, but we're seeing it more and more. It's never ever stopped that image is a big thing for individuals and what they look like and taking care of themselves. So it's been a big market, and I think it's a market that's continuing to grow.
Absolutely. And I think there's a few sectors in this market, and I remember growing up and all of those bad TV commercials of like a spray. You could just like spray a can on your head and your hair miraculously was there, and obviously all the nonsense that came along with it. There was a desperate attempt to grab into a market that was growing at that time. Male vanity, as it were, was on the increase, and men wanted to keep hair on their heads, and they were trying everything they could. But the recent scientific breakthroughs have allowed for smaller businesses to enter the market and oppose some of maybe the major manufacturers that are in global chain stores for like a basic hair loss shampoo.
Yeah, I think that the biggest thing with this is that it has been an industry where there are a lot of solutions out there, but maybe solutions is the wrong word, because I think there's a lot of products out there that are ineffective. You've talked about it, the sort of the spray-ons and the often wearing a wig and selling solutions like that. But there's an opportunity, especially for us, and what we recognize, and part of my story in getting into BAM was to actually have a very honest, transparent brand, giving guys the information that they need to make an informed decision on what's out there and what they can use and what they can also realistically expect from treatment, and helping them with their hair loss growth journey. So I think that was the biggest opportunity for us. We recognized that it was a market that was quite dishonest, lack of trust in it, and there was an opportunity to talk to guys that have a need. And as you say, it's a growing market, so there's a lot of guys that actually are looking for a solution.
So away from the business element, I suppose only ever so slightly, is that what's been marketed traditionally in the hair loss game is a one-size-fits-all over-the-counter sort of product that, hey, if you're losing hair, this will stop it, this will fix it, whatever. But the problems in hair loss are in isolation. Speak to me a little bit about why men lose hair and in the various ways, and why that means that there isn't one single solitary solution for all men who are experiencing hair loss.
Yeah, perfect. The crazy thing to actually realize in this space is still to this day, they're not 100% sure why guys actually lose their hair. You know, there are various scientific breakthroughs where they have a better understanding, but it's still not confirmed that this is 100% why guys lose hair. So if we fix this, you know, we're going to have a perfect result. The other side to it is, you know, with anything within the human body and everyone individually, you respond to treatments differently. So the results that you get through various options are going to be different. Some individuals might get a better result than others within the same treatment. Now, the primary sort of factor and what's best understood around why guys are losing their hair is got to do with your sort of hormones, testosterone, and a derivative of testosterone called dihydrotestosterone. So really important to note about hair loss is that you have to be predisposed genetically, and in simple terms, contain the hair loss gene. Now that's passed down. You know, there's a lot of reading out there that says that it's passed down from your mom's side, but that doesn't necessarily mean that's the case. So don't go off blaming mom. You know, it can be passed down, you know, through both sides of the family. So if you are predisposed with the hair loss gene, you are more susceptible to dihydrotestosterone or DHT. And what actually happens is, you know, guys have testosterone, a hormone in their body, and those hormones are responsible for actually growing hair in your body and puberty and deepening of a voice. So they play a really fundamental role within sort of as you growing up and becoming a man. Now, guys that have the hair loss gene have these receptors within their follicles. Everyone has them, and they work as little switches. And they interact with these hormones. Now, when your testosterone is converted into DHT, or dihydrotestosterone, which everyone's is through an enzyme called 5-alpha reductase, these DHT hormones bind to the follicles within your scalp, and they suffocate the follicles. So if you have the hair loss gene, your receptors are more susceptible to the binding of the follicles, and the DHT in your body is binds stronger than testosterone.
Okay, so let's focus on this process a little bit. So the enzymes convert testosterone hormone. Is this greater once testosterone levels come down? Does it convert at a greater rate? Or is it the higher the testosterone, the more DHT? Is it like a literal like-to-like graph?
Yeah, it is and it isn't. It's quite an interesting thing to say, but the obvious thing to that is the more testosterone that you have, the more conversion into dihydrotestosterone, DHT, that you have in your body. So that's a natural sort of joining the sort of conclusions to that. So yes, it is. But it doesn't necessarily mean that an individual with very high testosterone levels is going to have a greater conversion into that DHT or have a greater chance of hair loss, because it is very much on the how those receptors are actually responding to the binding DHT. Of that DHT. So if you don't have the hair loss gene, as an example, your receptors are less responding to the binding of the DHT. So you could have more DHT in your body, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to experience hair loss.
And you explain this as an on-off switch, the DHT receptors in the hair follicles themselves. This is because hair works in a cycle, correct? So you have a cycle of growth and a cycle of shedding and then a cycle of stagnation. Am I correct? So it's like you have a growth cycle, then it stagnates ever so slightly, and then it sheds.
Yeah, that's spot on. So let's talk about sort of how hair grows. So basically, you have a follicle that produces a hair, and in simple terms, that hair follicle goes through 3 stages. It's your growth phase, where the hair is actually growing. You've got your transition phase, where the follicle detaches from a nutrient supply or a blood supply, and the hair is actually just resting in that follicle. And then you've got a resting phase, where basically your hair is actually now detached from the follicle. It's sort of staying in place because it's of your skin layers, and it's going to come out at some stage. Now, in a healthy hair growing environment, someone that's not experiencing hair loss is still going to go through a phase where that follicle is growing hairs are falling out, and then they're growing new hairs again. Hair loss is defined as when the hair that's replacing the hair that's falling out is a lesser version of the hair before. So anyone that has healthy hair growth is losing anywhere between 100 to 150 strands on a daily basis. This is basically just natural hair sort of growth. And as long as that follicle is producing a strong, healthy hair, that means you're not going to notice anything. When we look back at sort of what we're talking about, the DHT and the problems around that, is once the DHT actually binds to the hair follicle, the easiest way to think about it is it suffocates that hair follicle from receiving the nutrients that it needs, cutting off the blood supply, which is carrying those nutrients. And you can think about it as that when it's suffocating that follicle, it's restricting it, so the follicle is actually becoming smaller. So what that means is when your hair falls out, the next time that follicle produces and grows a hair, it's a lesser version of the hair before, it's a smaller version. And we call this process hair miniaturization.
So it's a thinner strand of hair, it's less capable of growth. So because it's receiving less nutrients, it will grow at a much slower rate, and it's thinner. And then eventually, even worse is when it's completely blocked, it won't grow a new hair in that follicle at all.
That's exactly it. So over time, you never ever see someone with a full head of hair and then the next day they're bald. You start the thinning, you don't notice it as much in the beginning. Maybe it's because you're at varsity and you can't afford a haircut, so you've got a lot more hair. But over time, that starts getting, your hair gets thinner, and it does appear over a period of time that it's kind of fallen off that cliff, because your follicles that were producing 3 strong hairs started producing 2 hairs and then 1 thin hair, and then slowly over time, each time a new hair grows, it's a lot thinner and smaller, and that's when you get to a stage where you see thinning and eventually balding, if that follicle is going to continue to go through that restrictive process.
The reason I bring up testosterone specifically is that when you look at the statistical age range of hair loss, and it seems like it's greatest in the mid-30s of men, which is where you see the statistical decrease in natural testosterone production. So that decrease in natural testosterone production coincides with hair loss. And it's curious because, as we were saying, the testosterone converts through the enzymes to the hormone of DHT, which is largely responsible for hair loss. But now, logically, you'd imagine that a decrease in testosterone means a decrease in DHT production as well, which should result in less hair loss, not more.
Yeah, so that's exactly goes to show that the fact that more testosterone, the more DHT doesn't necessarily mean the more hair loss that you're going to experience. So as we touched on earlier, not everyone has the hair loss gene, so that's going to be the first factor. Whether or not you have that hair loss gene, it means that you're going to be more susceptible to DHT. If you are more susceptible to DHT, you don't necessarily need huge volumes of that DHT for it to have an effect. It just means that the DHT you have in your body is almost racing to bind to those follicles, and that's why you're getting that sort of hair loss progression. Now, you'll see some guys at the age of 35, like you've mentioned, or closer to 40, going through that thinning process, and it's progressing, and you may see someone at the age of 28 that's almost completely bald. And the reality is, it's because their body, the way that they're responding to it in a lot quicker process. So if you are susceptible to DHT, you contain the hair loss gene and all of that, having more DHT in your body is only going to speed up the process.
Right.
But it doesn't necessarily mean that this is the only reason for decrease in the DHT. Is obviously how we can control the sort of the effect of how quickly you progress. But you do have DHT in your body, and the problem still exists.
I want to remember that and get back to that in a moment.
Sure.
In terms of controlling DHT and how that is done. But we see this process of accelerated hair loss with increased levels of DHT to those who are susceptible to it in young men who have that gene using testosterone exogenously in the form of anabolic steroids. So anabolic steroid use causes a massive acceleration in hair loss in specific individuals. And that's where that logical stance comes in, is the increase in testosterone has increased the DHT production. Some people will be perfectly fine. The DHT will not go and race to those hair follicles, as you said. But if you do have that gene, the increase in testosterone is likely to accelerate your hair loss at a rapid rate.
Yeah, that's exactly correct. And I think taking testosterone from external supplies, you've mentioned sort of your anabolic steroids, other treatments, sort of your testosterone replacement therapies or TRT, all of these are sort of a synthetic testosterone that you're introducing into your body. For some guys, that's absolutely fine. It's not going to have any effect on their hair loss, or it's going to have such a small effect that you don't actually notice it. Where other guys, it will have a lot more of an effect. Now, if you have these receptors, which are the technical term of them is your androgen receptors that basically bind to this dihydrotestosterone. If you're susceptible to this, the higher levels of testosterone you have in your body, the higher probability of a conversion of that and greater quantities of dihydrotestosterone in your body, and therefore the sort of more rapid response that you can expect on your hair. The other factor to this is basically how you respond to that testosterone and what you're actually taking. So, different doses are going to have an effect. How long you've been using it for. You might get some guys that have sort of take anabolic steroids or do a TRT treatment and see an effect within their hair loss pretty quickly. You may have others that will see an effect over a longer period of time. So that's kind of the challenge that you have with the human body and how you respond to various things. It's not as clear cut as this, you do this, this actually happens.
Of course, we see it in anabolic steroid usage. So people trying to get to the gym, put on a lot of muscle, etc., because the dosages are a lot higher than that of TRT, for example, in slightly older men who are having a more balanced, lower level of testosterone. But the thing I would imagine is the hormonal consistency. So the body getting used to a consistent level of testosterone on TRT versus anabolic steroid usage, which is a huge influx of testosterone, and then having to come off of that and go back to normal levels of testosterone. Of course, TRT has major benefits. We know of the side effects and the negativity around anabolic steroid usage because of those fluctuations in hormones. However, I'm a big advocate for men going on to TRT after a certain age because of all the health benefits associated to that. However, of course, there's still that risk of hair loss acceleration with that.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And I think the main thing with this is actually just consulting and chatting to experts in the space, medical doctors that can advise you on these, understand the risks with any sort of treatment, as well as understand the benefits. What's interesting with the human body is we often think more of something is bad, but actually it's not necessarily that we have more DHT in our system or more of something. It's actually the imbalance of it. So you're at a balance of having a ratio of something towards something else. It's the increase in one thing is actually affecting the balance, rather than saying that it's a problem with the increase of it. And that imbalance is what feedback loops your body gives you and the effects that you can start having as things get thrown out.
I want to get to treatments, and I've just been distracted by another thought, but there's this element of medical practicing or traditional medical practicing where they will say something like, this is normal for a man your age. So it's this idea of acceptance of what's happening to our bodies. And on the subject of testosterone, on the subject of hair loss, etc., in your late 30s, you go to a doctor, listen, I'm very unhappy, I'm losing my hair, or I don't feel as muscular, I don't think, and then they test you and they say, look, your testosterone levels are normal for a man your age. Your hair loss is normal for your man your age. Do we have to accept that? Are we at a stage in technology where we're like, well, it's normal for a man my age, I need to just be comfortable with that? Or are we able to stop that clock and say, I don't want to be normal, I want to be optimized?
I think that that's a personal decision, and I think it's really important to understand how it's affecting your life. I think that that's the biggest thing. We're using two examples here. We're talking about testosterone, and we're also talking about hair loss. Now, if hair loss is affecting your life in a way that it's affecting your confidence, it's affecting your self-esteem, all of these things, then I think it's completely reasonable not to accept that and to address that because it's having a fundamental effect on you. The same with testosterone. If it is normal that you're going to have a decrease in testosterone as you sort of age, but depending on how that's affecting you in your life is depending on what decision that you should be making. The most important is to have the information so you can make an informed decision to say, cool, like this is how I'm experiencing, this is how I'm feeling, this is what I want to get to, this is the information. Now I can make an informed decision because we can accept it, but we also don't need to accept it.
Yeah, I agree fully. I don't think that people should accept it. I don't like that traditional narrative of this is normal for your age. I think that we should be combating these sort of things and live a happier, healthier life, no matter what our age is, and optimize to the maximum level that we can whilst understanding all of the benefits and all the cons as well at the same time.
Absolutely.
And, not taking major risks in doing it. But if we can optimize our lives today, I think that we should be doing it. And I think hair loss is a big part of that, is that if you can stop the hair loss, you don't need to just accept, well, I'm getting older, I'm going to lose my hair. Do something about it. And there's lots to do.
100%.
And exactly the point I've stopped us several times on and said I want to remember before we go on too long is how do we block DHT? And I use the term block, I think, very specifically.
Yeah, so it's quite interesting. I think maybe
when necessary, I suppose.
Yeah, for sure. I'd like to kind of go back a little bit and share my sort of experience as well, if that's
of course,
if that's cool. So, I started experiencing hair loss at the age of 25, I would say. By the age of 27, it was a lot more noticeable, and that's when it really started having an effect on my confidence and how I saw myself. And at the age of around about 30, I decided to do something about it. A typical example of guys, we generally wait too long to sort something out or address it if we are experiencing a problem. But then once we've made a decision to fix it, we want results overnight. And at that stage, I was quite misinformed. I didn't really understand what was happening, what was available. So I went to what was sort of close to me, what was advertised within my face, and went to a clinic to get advice on what I should be doing. From that, I met with the guys and they gave me a very half picture of what's actually happening and what would be useful to me. I got sold at that time a laser treatment, which was quite expensive. I think I paid about 30,000 Rand for that laser treatment. A lot of money, also a big inconvenience. I'd have to go back twice a week to have this laser. And after about a 10-week period, I didn't really see any results. Not to sort of discredit laser. There are guys that do experience results with laser, but I definitely didn't see results. And I think that is more common than not. From there, I was sold a plant sort of cell sort of treatment. I remember it was 5 vials, cost 25,000 Rand a vial. So it's 5 grand a vial, a lot of money. And I had to apply these once every 2 weeks. And I remember going down to Cape Town to rugby 10s or 7s and leaving 1 vial in the Airbnb. And that kind of sort of broke the camel's back. And I just said, this is not a great experience. Emotionally, I've been attached to finding a solution for me, and that's how we got into this. I was really trying to find a solution for myself, and that was the start of ANBAM and actually fixing a lot of my friends' hair loss sort of problems. Why I mentioned that is when I got into it, I realized that there are treatments that are tried and tested, that have been around for many years, and that exist. And unfortunately, I didn't get that picture up front because the individuals that I was meeting with was actually more of a sales consultant than a medical doctor. So the treatments that they could provide were very much non-medical prescription products. And there are prescription products that have been around from the early 90s, late 90s that are very effective in treating their hair loss. Unfortunately, they are not effective for everyone, but about 80% of guys will see a result from using treatments and using treatment consistently. So one of the main treatments, back to your sort of question, which has been shown the most effective treatment in hair loss, is a medical ingredient named finasteride. Now, finasteride, much the same as most hair loss remedies, was actually designed to treat other conditions, and they found that it had an effect on hair growth and the stopping of the hair loss problem. It was actually a prostate medication designed to reduce the size of your prostate, and the guys that were taking that in the trials got a secondary benefit. And eventually, finasteride was approved at a dose of 1 milligram to treat hair loss. Now, how finasteride works and other sort of derivatives of that is what we refer to them as the DHT blockers. So in our conversation earlier, we talked about we have testosterone in our body, and that gets converted into dihydrotestosterone or DHT. Now, the enzyme that actually does that conversion is something called 5-alpha reductase. And drugs like finasteride are designed to prevent that enzyme from converting testosterone into that DHT. So the idea there is, and how it actually works, is basically the less DHT in your body, if you're susceptible to hair loss and your receptors on binding with that DHT, the less you have in the body, it's stopping the problem. So finasteride is a really effective drug in stopping the hair loss problem and actually stopping that miniaturization of the follicles that we discussed earlier.
And that's why you can see marginal recovery, right? So when a follicle is suffocated completely and there's no new hairs growing there anymore, it's extremely unlikely or impossible to actually grow a new hair through that follicle. But that miniaturization process can be reversed ever so slightly when the DHT is reduced.
Yeah, and that's the biggest thing with hair loss. The more proactive you are and the earlier you start treatment, your higher probability of success. So there is reading out there that states that once the follicle has reduced to a certain size, 50% of its original size or 20% of its original size, you're not going to see an improvement through treating that follicle and through treatment. We see differently, to be honest, within the guys that are experiencing it, but I think it's a very good message out there. The earlier you've start treatment, the easier it is to get that hair back. And, this is kind of the biggest reason why we started ANBAM. So guys don't have to go through the same journey that I went through, and that they have the information up front there so that they know all the options and they can decide on whether or not this is a treatment for them and that they're going to continue with it. So if you've experienced hair loss in the last few years, you're starting early before it becomes too progressed. These are all leading indicators to a high probability of success.
Okay, so that's specifically the DHT treatment side of things. Now, that would be taken orally as a medication prescribed by a doctor. Obviously, it is a restricted drug and not over-the-counter medication. Let's talk about what is applied to the head, shampoos, treatments, things like that, in an external sense. So stuff that's not oral medication that assists in keeping the hair that you've got or recovering.
Yeah, so I think we mentioned, there are tried and tested medications. The two that I uncovered and probably the most popular within treating the hair loss space is the finasteride, which we've touched on, and the other drug is something named minoxidil. Now, finasteride has a slightly higher response rate in terms of treatment, and I would say it's the core, where minoxidil has an effective sort of rate of anywhere between sort of 40 to 50% of guys using that drug. It's a slightly lower schedule, and generally the minoxidil is applied topically. Now, the role of the minoxidil is to increase blood flow, and by increasing blood flow to those follicles, you're increasing nutrients. So it's actually the nutrients that the follicle requires in order for it to grow and to be healthy. Now, the pair of those ingredients work really well together. You've got finasteride that's stopping the problem, and then you've got minoxidil that's improving and trying to stimulate in the growth. So often you'll find guys doing one or the other. So you may be trying to improve by using a minoxidil and applying topically, but you're not stopping the problem. And so, you may see some short-term benefits, you may see some benefits, but over a longer period of time, it's difficult to sustain that. Interestingly enough, both on the minoxidil and the finasteride side, there's more and more research coming out where we are seeing a really good response of minoxidil taken orally. And the same with finasteride, we're seeing a good response with finasteride used topically.
Okay.
And I think that there is a lot of negative publicity out there, specifically on the finasteride and the DHT blocking side. And so guys are very tentative to take that oral medication because there are really sort of key known side effects that are associated with that oral finasteride, and I'm sure we'll get into it. And I think why ANBAM has become so popular, and the progress that we've been able to make is we personalize the medication for you based obviously on your interactions with the doctor and your whole medical onboarding. You can't just come to us and get these ingredients or this treatment without actually going through that medical onboarding. But we've been able to put the finasteride into a topical treatment, as an example, together with the minoxidil, play around with doses, so we are in control of sort of the systemic absorption into your system, as well as sort of managing those side effects associated with any medication that you take or apply.
Let's speak specifically about ANBAM, and of course, it can be quite difficult for people who especially live around the country, perhaps in areas unlike Cape Town and Johannesburg city centres, where there are tons of clinics, practitioners, etc., that you can go and visit and perhaps get some consultations on, etc. But ANBAM is a little bit different. You guys operate largely digitally, and it means that it's accessible by many more people.
That's exactly it. And I think that's something that I realized when I was going through my own hair loss journey. I took long to react because I didn't know where to go. I didn't have the information. As I mentioned, going for laser treatments twice a week, in a busy work schedule is just not easy. And
scary, right? Scary
Absolutely.
to go to a doctor's office and like accept that you've got a problem and like go and see someone. It's a lot less scary to log onto your computer and
Correct.
like ask a question.
Exactly. That uneasiness, sort of the sitting in a sort of waiting room, waiting to be treated, everyone there, why they're there, and it's just an awkward environment. So what we were able to do with ANBAM is really a innovation on the business model, not necessarily on the medications
Sure.
or the ingredients that you've been provided. Not to discredit the ability to change the doses of those ingredients, because that's actually key in terms of both managing side effects and the effects. So you can actually go and get some of these medications, if you go and visit your doctor and you get a script and you go to your local pharmacy, but you're going to get it in certain doses, there's not that sort of personalization or specific for you. So what did we do at Bam? We made it super simple for you to get started, because as we've discussed now, being proactive and actually treating hair loss early is the best actually indicator to having success. So you would land on our website, you would answer a medical assessment, which you can do in your personal time at home, sort of wherever you may be on your phone. You book a time to chat with one of our partner doctors. You'll have that consult with a partner doctor digitally. That can be via video call, that can be by a normal call, depending on your preference and what you're comfortable. And at the end of the consultation, the doctor will prescribe the various medical active ingredients or non-medical ingredients that they would like you to include within your treatment at the relevant doses, and then BAM basically facilitates having that fulfilled. We make that up for you in your chosen application treatment, whether it's an oral dose, whether it's topical, whether it's a combination of both. You can add supporting products to that, like your shampoos and your conditioners, and then that's sort of packaged and delivered to your door. We ship that to you every 3 months, but we give guys the option to pay monthly or quarterly, just to help with the budget. So that's our business model, and it's a convenience factor, and the ability for you to address it early on and be proactive.
Absolutely awesome. Love the business model. I want to get into, you've just brought up shampoos, and it's the first time that we're discussing shampoos. And one of the big things currently circulating around the internet in terms of the discussion of hair loss is sulfate-based shampoos, and specifically sodium lauryl sulfate, associated to suffocation of hair follicles. And the prevalence of sulfates in shampoos is absolutely astounding. There's a lot of sulfate-based shampoos. It's actually hard to find one in a grocery store or a regular pharmacy that says sulfate-free, and that's very clearly advertised for a reason now.
Yeah, I think we're starting to see, just in general with anything, we're becoming more aware of what's going into our products, what's going into our food, the choices that we're making on the products that we're buying. And one of the things that we're seeing is this big trend to sulfate-free shampoos. Now, what does that actually mean? What is sulfates? How does it sort of affect sort of your general scalp health and your hair loss? Well, the two main sulfates that are concerning are something called sodium lauryl sulfate, which is SLS, and sodium lauryl sulfate, which is SLES. Now, what are these ingredients? These sulfates are actually your surfactants that go into your products. So they're responsible for the cleaning as well as the foaming capability of products. And this is very prevalent in shampoos, but also other personal care products that you use, for instance, your body wash. These ingredients are very effective at what they do. And it's the fact that they are so effective is actually often what causes the problem. So if you have products that you're using with these, and it's cleaning your hair and your scalp too aggressively, what you're actually left with is a very dry scalp, and the dryness around that can cause other scalp issues and inflammation, and that's actually what's responsible for an unhealthy environment and hair loss.
I'd like to ask, what exactly is sodium lauryl sulfate? Obviously, the name suggesting that salts and sulfates are what's the main ingredients in it. And we all know how drying salt can be to our skin, for example. So sodium lauryl sulfate and sodium lauryl sulfate, what makes up these ingredients?
Yeah, I mean, I don't actually have the full answer for you on that. To be honest, it's exactly as you've said, the different sulfates and salts, but the easiest way to think about it is it's your surfactants and it's your cleaning sort of properties that are going into these ingredients. So For a healthy scalp environment, we require hydration to the scalp and your natural oils on the scalp. So if you get a product that's cleaning those too aggressively, so in one way it's working really well because it's removing dirt, it's removing product buildup. But on the other side of it, if it's working too effectively, you are eliminating those natural oils that you have on your scalp. You're breaking down the skin barrier, which is going to cause other complications of bringing in your parabens or your other chemicals into the scalp, and those are the things that are going to create your dryness and irritation, redness, inflammation, and all of these things are sort of leading indicators for an unhealthy scalp, and also the same as hair loss. Now, how important is this for everyone? That's the big question. The reality is, for a lot of people, you're not going to see too much of a difference, and we've been using these products for a long time. Extensive use over a longer period of time will obviously have an effect as well. But the individuals that are going to be more concerned about this are individuals that have scalp issues, have sensitive skin. These are the guys that are going to want to try and ensure that they are focusing on products that don't have these sulfates. For the general population, yes, it's always better to choose products that are not going to have an effect over a longer period of time, but it's definitely not something that you're going to put on your head and by tomorrow, have a serious issue.
Of course, these sulfates are used because of their low cost, and it's easy to include, and they're effective. Sulfate-free shampoos can cost a lot more. Would you say outright, and I hate to get a medical recommendation from you without being able to consult someone, but a general rule of thumb is, would you avoid sulfates in shampoos in general, especially for men who are fearful of hair loss?
Absolutely. I think, there's information out there that these have an effect. How much they're going to have an effect on you personally is a whole nother discussion, and that's going to be sort of proof in the pudding. But if you have that information, as you mentioned, sometimes these sulfate-free shampoo, not sometimes, mostly they are more expensive.
Absolutely.
So you can afford the products. I think it's the same discussion with anything within life. The more you're aware of something, the more healthy you can be, the better decisions that you're making on what you're putting into your body and on your body is only going to be advantageous. And I think that for anyone, whether they're experiencing hair loss or not experiencing hair loss, use products that are using the right ingredients for you and are beneficial for you.
Absolutely. You're taking a massive risk using sulfates in your shampoos. Even if you're not experiencing that hair loss yet, you could be accelerating a problem that's on the way, which isn't bad for business. So really bad business advice there that you're giving out to the public. But once again, like you said, the main business philosophy is to help people keep hair on their heads. And if they don't need to come to you super early, that's a good thing.
Absolutely. I mean, we started this business to help guys like ourselves, in being more confident and comfortable with their situation, whether that's growing them back full head of hair, or whether they're embracing kind of shaving it off. Each individual is different. These types of factors affect their confidence differently, but we always recommend sort of using the best products for you, so you can live a healthy lifestyle.
What other products are guys using? I shared a story with you before we started talking, and that when I first was made aware of the sulfates in shampoos, I was using a common hair loss shampoo, not because I've personally seen any hair loss, but because you're encouraged to use hair loss shampoos early as a preventative measure, even before you're seeing any sort of signs of hair loss. And I probably started using hair loss shampoos, common ones off the shelf, in my early 20s. And then came across my hair loss shampoo when learning about these sulfate shampoos. and reading the ingredient directly there on the back of the bottle and then throwing it out and replacing it with something more expensive and sulfate free. What else are guys using for preventing hair loss? What are guys doing that's accelerating their process of hair loss?
Yeah, so I think that the common one, what we've discussed, is your shampoos and your conditioners. Quite interestingly, you get a range of guys that go from not washing their hair at all to, washing their hair sort of every day. And some guys don't use a shampoo and conditioner. Some guys just use a shampoo. Some guys will use both depending on their personal care routine and what they've been exposed to. So I think in that instance, definitely the decision to try and be aware of the shampoos and conditioners that you are using. In causing a problem, there could be things that you're applying to your hair that can cause a problem. Doesn't necessarily mean that it will be, but it definitely means that you can be more informed when you're younger around the styling products that you actually use as well. I remember I used to use something called Dax wax back in the day that we used to get from overseas, which was literally a wax that you had to use a hairdryer to melt it in your hands before applying it, and you could swim with it, and
your hair would stay in place.
Fine, yeah. So obviously, when you're using styling products that are not rinsing out with water, they're difficult to get up. It's creating a buildup on your scalp. Doesn't necessarily mean that styling product is what's causing the hair loss. It's that styling product or things that you're putting onto your scalp that's causing an unhealthy scalp environment. And with that buildup, you are causing sort of irritation, inflammation, creating other effects, and that can lead to hair loss. But it also could lead to other things that are unwanted, which is like irritation, itchiness, bumps on your scalp, sort of blocked follicles, all of these types of things. Other products that guys are using on their scalp, can't really think of anything, as men who do. You do get guys that do treatments to their hair, so it's straightening treatments or coloring treatments, and everything within moderation. Not to put a scare tactic out there. It's like, if you do this, this is going to happen. It's how aggressively you're doing it, where you're going to do those treatments, what's in those products that you're using. I guess the theme is to be more informed about what products you're using, what's in it, and being at peace with that.
Well, you have a brand to protect, so you have to be careful with what you say, but I'm not going to be careful with what I say. Don't buy the 3-in-1 body wash, shampoo, etc. All of those things. Use a separate good quality shampoo. Buy something that's sulfate free. Why use sulfates in the first place if you've got the opportunity to avoid it? Whether it's going to be a problem for you or not, use a healthier product. Try to avoid heavy waxes and things like that. It's going to be ridiculous. And don't peroxide your hair. I made that mistake, and that's not fun. You'll feel it all day long on that scalp. So outright, like, avoid those sort of things and try to keep the hair on your head.
Absolutely. It's an easy decision to make. And you should be making these types of decisions, especially these days with having the options available to you. Whether it's getting a shampoo conditioner from Bam or whether it's walking into your local supermarket or your pharmacy, there are options out there that are accessible for you to purchase.
Okay, so for guys who are not experiencing hair loss necessarily, don't want to use Bam and do a consultation, etc., but they're prepared to take preventative measures already now to have a healthier scalp environment, healthier hair in general, and avoid the necessity for medications like you said, finasteride and minoxidil.
Yeah.
There we go. Avoiding medications that could potentially have side effects. What can they do?
Yeah, so I think that the obvious one is the shampoos and conditioners that you're using.
Do Bam have a range of shampoos and conditioners that are non-prescription?
Yes, we do.
So you won't have to go through a consultation. You can simply go to the website, say, look, I'm looking for just shampoos and conditioners. give it to me on a 3-month cycle.
That's exactly it. So purchased our products from us on our website. We also sell our products on Take-A-Lot and MediRite Plus as well. So you can get the shampoo and conditioner. If you buy the bundle, it's free delivery to your door. It's an easy option, and that's what you should be doing. Often as guys, we're very reactive. This happens, and then we want to kind of solve it. And often when that is the case, if we've left it too late, it's harder to solve. So if you are experiencing hair loss and that hair loss is progressing, we are always going to recommend the most effective solutions for you, and that is going to be your topical medical treatments or your oral medical treatments, and you obviously compare that with the shampoo and conditioner. The reason that the shampoo and conditioner can only be as effective as it's designed to be is it's only left on your scalp or within your body for a small period of time. You might be washing your hair and conditioning for 1 minute at a time. So guys that aren't experiencing hair loss or very earlier stages, it's always recommended to use a shampoo and conditioner that's going to have the right ingredients to both try and block some of that DHT, stimulate growth, create a good environment for hair to grow. And if it progresses, then you can start considering what your options are for a personalized treatment. Hair loss shampoo is another word for it is just keeping your hair healthy and thick. So there's no ingredients in there that are going to be detrimental to you.
Yes.
These are really just ingredients that are going to keep your hair strong, nutrient supplied. You're not going to experience things with less breakages, better hydration, but then you've also got your chosen scientific active ingredients that are in there to help ensure that you're growing strong, healthy hair.
So on the mental health side of things, we're looking at a population of men who are going on the internet and sort of telling men who are trying to prevent their hair loss that they're idiots, just shave your head, I'm happy, etc. And as much as I will encourage people to be okay with the hair loss they're having, I don't want to say to people, you should fix your hair, otherwise you're going to feel bad about yourself and you're going to look like crap. I think there's a lot of guys, there's a guy I met this week who was showing slight regrow, who clearly shaves his head. And I'm like, you look so, I can't imagine you with hair. You look so good with a shaved head. And I think that people need to consider that option and sort of be okay with the hair loss that they're having. But also in saying that it can't be a problem that's just ignored and you can just say, well, just shave your head and it'll be okay, when it is a problem for a lot of people. And we've seen self-esteem improvements with people who have had their hair back, and we see serious cases of depression, etc., associated to the hair loss that people are experiencing.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I think it's frustrating when we're obviously running ads and sort of educating individuals about hair loss and what their solutions are and what options they have. And you'll get sort of your keyboard warriors responding to posts to be like, such idiots, nothing works, shave your head, I shave my head, I'm happy, X, Y, and Z. And that is great. And I recognize that there are guys out there for that. And we encourage that. Like,
I'm going to interrupt you there. Nobody who starts a random Instagram post with "you idiots" is happy.
Correct.
Absolutely not happy.
The fact that they have time, for sure. Yeah. No, I hear you on that. I mean, I worry what people do during the day that they have so much time.
This is someone who's obviously tried certain things, failed with his hair loss.
Correct.
And that is something that people need to keep in mind, that no matter who they go to, no matter what they do, there's no full guarantee. And you alluded to this at the beginning of the podcast, is that these treatments aren't going to work for absolutely everyone.
Yeah.
You guys have a fantastic success rate that deserves to be celebrated. But you have to say that it is not absolute. It's not necessarily going to work for everyone. And this could be one of the guys who is in that small percentage of the population that just no matter what he's going to try, it's going to fail. Or he tried the wrong things and he's now bitter and saying like, nothing works.
Correct.
Just shave your head and I'm happy.
Embrace it. And unfortunately, a lot of guys are affected from a sort of confidence perspective on what they look like and how they feel. There's a reason that we say look good, feel good, and not the other way around, feel good, look good, because that is the reality. I can talk from my own experience. My own hair loss affected my confidence, and I actually, to the extent that I didn't like being in photos and sort of took myself out of those social situations. Everyone experiences it differently. So the main things that we see is that you become very self-conscious about your hair if it's affecting you, and then that creates sort of overly worrying about it. And in the social interactions that you have, you begin to start to withdraw, and it also increases your anxiety because of the sort of stress that you have on this, what you're looking like, how you feeling like in these interactions. That can also lead to other problems like depression, which associate low mood, your lack of sleep. It's constant sort of worrying about things, and we see this on a regular basis within ANBAM. So we get the guys that are happy to embrace it, shave their hair. That's fantastic. Go that route. If it's not, you allow guys to explore that, because it can be severe on your mental health, to the extent that we've actually helped guys overcome their body dysmorphia that they've had, where they've completely withdrawn out of society, from coming out of a varsity environment, being a really cool guy, losing all their hair and not actually knowing how to deal with that. So there, as little as it sounds like a hair loss issue, and how that can actually have the psychological effects that can have, it's really, really key to understand that everyone has a different image of themselves, their confidence levels, and allow people to explore that themselves.
And if you've got options to save your hair and it's going to make you feel better, you have to just take them.
Absolutely. I mean, we all know that we all feel better when we are looking good, feeling like we're looking good, feeling healthy, rested, whatever it may be. So, the options are there.
Yeah.
Go for it.
A lot of guys hiding behind a cap when they're experiencing some hair loss, and then people are like, don't wear a cap. It accelerates the hair loss. Any truth in that?
I think that there is some truth in it, in the terms of, wearing a cap, depending on the environment. If you are doing sport and you're sweating excessively underneath that cap, obviously sweat and those sort of things can have a negative effect on your scalp. I wouldn't go as far as saying wearing a hat is going to cause hair loss, but there is levels of truth within that. But exactly what you've mentioned, guys are covering their hair loss with a cap because they're uncomfortable about it. But that's not a solution. That's just a temporary sort of fix that's not stopping the problem, and it's not going to sort of help later on the line, because it's only prolonging you from actually taking action now, and it's going to make it harder for you to sort it. So
and recover that hair. Yeah.
Exactly. So if it's not affecting you, rock the hat, shave your hair, great. If it is affecting you, find out the options, chat to informed individuals, and start early.
David de Villiers, thank you so much for joining me on this episode of the podcast. And ANBAM, be sure to visit their website. There'll be a link in the description below. Such a fun brand, such a fun company. You guys are doing great things online. And of course, I love your drive and passion for keeping hair on the heads of South African men. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Thanks for having me.
That has been an episode of the Marco Martins Revolution, brought to you by Vodcast TV, Johannesburg's premier shared podcast studio platform. If you have ever wanted to do a podcast for yourself or your business, be sure to visit vodcasttv.com/revolution now and get yourself a discount on the first order of a podcast or podcast series. From me, for now, it's goodbye.